lost your mind. You know you should, so I guess you might as well. What's the story, morning?
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Long and Hard Podcast, episode 11, Morning Glory. I am part one of two of your co-hosts, Josh Blaze, and this is
part 2 out of 2 of your co-hosts, Thomas Harrington. Welcome back. This is episode 11. Pretty huge, well into the double digits now of our episode numbers here. And just a reminder, Long and Hard is a podcast all about improving your mindset, life, and business. Practical advice from us. Now, this isn't just exclusive to entrepreneurs either, right? This is anyone who's looking to, improve themselves, their life, things around them, all that fun stuff. And you'll kind of see this in today's episode, which is all about Morning Glory. Which,
he's laughing about the intro.
yeah. Well, Josh just told me the name right now, which is good. But I'm liking that.
I can't believe you've never heard that song before.
No, I haven't heard that song. So that was what was it called? Morning Glory by Oasis.
Morning Glory by Oasis. Yes.
Oasis
very nice. Very nice. Back in the 90s, but
was it 90s? I thought it was.
I think it was like late 90s, early 2000s. But
yeah, what a time. We Chris D'Elia just did like a thing on his podcast where he started like fake singing Wonderwall by Oasis, like really putting on the their like northern British accent or whatever it is.
Today is gonna be the day, but they'll never throw it back to you.
Yeah, it's more like yow, not you. Yeah,
yow.
There you go.
Yeah. So as the title said, we're talking about getting up in the morning and getting after it today. And then also, I think we're going to switch up the template a little bit. We're going to be talking about that and then doing news articles for the other half. We
got some current events or whatever here. So, yeah, but it's kind of how to have a killer morning routine. Get yourself into some morning glory. What, Josh, what's your morning routine look like right now?
Oh my God. It's like get up around noon, swig some coffee so I'm not dead. Start working around like 2:30 p.m. or so, go back to bed around, like 3 a.m. and do it all over again.
Perfect. Sounds good. All right. Episode over. Yeah. Clock into work at about noon, about 2:30, like, check the wristwatch. I've had enough. Call it a day, guys.
I mean, it's a pretty good day if I'm not hungover, so.
Oh, that you consider that a win. That's the threshold, eh?
That is the epitome of success. So yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I think that morning routine has changed. But since I've been in Montreal, I've been fairly consistent getting up at a certain time around like 7:38. After that, like either hitting the gym or getting coffee, going to work for 2-3 hours, and then eating around noon. So that's kind of been like my mornings have been essentially that. I mean, there's been days obviously that are not like that.
Yeah, it's not exactly as regimented.
Yeah. And I mean, I think we'll talk about that sort of thing, that like every day is not going to be perfect, but
no.
Your morning is the kind of the pacemaker for the rest of the day. So however you hit your morning, the rest of your day is going to follow in a very similar stride. So that's why I think that it's a big topic and something that we're going to hammer today. How about you? What's your morning routine like back in E-Town?
Well, for me, because I typically like to start, like I'm fortunate to have a home office, and obviously you and I are self-employed, so some of these things might not be entirely possible for everyone, right? But for me, I start right away, just jamming from the home office sort of thing. I try to avoid. I don't really like traffic, I try to build my schedule around traffic as much as possible, one way or another, just for being more efficient time wise. So kind of getting started on those tasks right away. Usually try to get, well, in the real estate world, you'll kind of have a bunch of paperwork and follow up that will accumulate by the end of any given day. So kind of hammering all that out first, and getting your hardest task out of the way, right? That would kind of be it. And then for me, it's kind of more about some of the little micro things you do. So I'm not really someone who's like, all right, 8:05 sip coffee, 8:07 check email, 8:09 sip coffee again. It's more like, okay, what are good things you can do to start your day and provide a little structure, but then it's not about an extremely regimented 1 hour, 2 hour schedule. I think it's more about, again, just having little things that you can always go to. And like you said, you're not gonna every day be exactly perfect and check all the boxes, but like, what are little things that can kind of get you going, get you started, right? And hey, full disclosure, right? And to that point, have I been perfect with my morning routine as of late? I mean, good on and off. I have a decently set form of habits, but some of these things that I wrote down on my notes here is, well, some of them I've been slacking on, but definitely things I've done in the past. We'll kind of get to those, and I think this is going to inspire me a little bit to jump back on the wagon for a few of these.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, the Twitter sphere in this kind of space is like 4:30, wake up. 4:35, step into an ice cold shower. Yeah. 4:45, gym for 3 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's kind of this weird hustle culture that's all about getting up at 4 a.m. and like, if that works for you, or maybe if that's what your work requires, cool. But like, you need to plan the rest of your schedule around that, right? And for me, and one thing that's really changed kind of my morning and evening routines lately is so there's a really great episode on Joe Rogan. The guest name is Matthew Walker, I want to say, who was a sleep doctor. Have you listened to that one? It was about 6 months ago. I'll put a link to it, because that's probably one, even if you're not a big Joe Rogan listener, like, I would recommend it. It's, I would say, life-changing, in all honesty, right?
It's one of the best podcasts he's done,
hands down, for sure. And it's all about just sleep, the necessity of sleep, and to the 4 a.m. point, like, the amount of people, because a lot of people out there are like, oh, I only need 4 hours of sleep, 5 hours of sleep. The amount of, to paraphrase a little bit, but the amount of people who can legitimately survive on less than 6 hours of sleep, expressed as a percentage of the population and rounded to the nearest whole number, is 0, right? So there's a small percentage of people who can deal with 6. Most people need 7 to 7.5, if not 8, right? So to go against the, I mean, there's a lot. There's too many names to name, but for this kind of weird hustle culture, especially in the real estate world and anything self-employed, where it's all about, who can sleep the least, it's a really, really bad thing for you, right? So that's, I think that ties into it, and we'll come back to this, but then your morning, your day starts the night before too, right? And part of that is also getting really good sleep. And chronic sleep deprivation is very much a thing in North America right now. And if you listen to this Joe Rogan episode, where we're at right now in terms of sleep, knowledge about sleep deprivation is like smoking in the like 70s and 80s, where the scientific community knew it was really bad, but it wasn't really like mass public knowledge quite yet.
Yeah, I think that they're going to be seeing in the next 10 to 15 years. They're like, well, we took off 5, 10 years of our life by doing this sort of thing. Yeah. And I definitely have that point here, is that your night dictates your morning too. So I didn't even really think about like a sleep routine. I was just kind of thinking about like getting up in the morning, getting after it. But no, that's a very good point.
It's something that I've kind of only in the past few months, frankly, really kind of researched and learned about, and kind of had just a like a intellectual hard on for, and really pushing that out there just to my friends and stuff. So
Yeah.
I think it's super important, right? So excuse me. So I guess rather than reiterate our extremely perfect morning routines, like let's kind of go over some things I mean, it's better to have, I would say, a general working knowledge, vague framework that you can keep in mind, and then build what works for you too, right? Because obviously Josh mentioned, the times he gets up and gets started, and same for me. Like our businesses, you can start more around 9 o'clock, like let's call it normal working hours or whatever, right?
Mhm.
If you're someone who's more trades or whatever, or something, like if it's 6, 7, 7:30, whatever time you have to start, like be at work, you'll need to adjust as well.
Yeah. I think like to make generalizations about it, you do need to get up early, but at a consistent time. So whatever that
Mm-hmm.
means for you,
Yeah.
waking up at a consistent time is more important than waking up at 4:30 in the morning. I mean, I've done
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
before, and
Yeah. I was 5 a.m. club for a while, and like
it
well,
depends on the person. I think
oh, for sure.
like for me, I don't do very well. Like I get up and then
Mm-hmm.
I'll be sitting there for half an hour kind of straight at nothing, doing
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely
Yeah.
being completely unproductive.
Well, yeah,
And
and I would even say for me, like, and probably you too, and if you're someone like a real estate agent where you're very consumer facing industry, right? And then also you have your fellow industry members, yada, yada, yada. Well, to uh, like if you're calling clients like 5:45 a.m., no one's going to answer you, right? So if
mhm,
you're like our business world doesn't start until later in the day, frankly, right? So it's kind of ineffective, or you'll just be sitting there for 4 hours with nothing to do, right? So,
yeah, I think
but
that
again,
one thing that you need to obviously do though is there's the people that will get up 5 minutes before they need to be somewhere,
yeah.
throw down a granola bar, pop in the shower, and run out the
Mhm.
door. Like that cannot be you, regardless of what you
No,
do.
I'd say no, no, for sure. Well,
Yeah.
let's
So
do, yeah, that's good. So, um, let's start night before, and then kind of go through, and then sleep, and then waking up, if that, you know what I mean?
yeah, sounds good to
Yeah.
me.
So, I mean, obviously the night before, you should probably end your day thinking about planning what you need to do that next day, right? Uh, Everyone should have like regardless of what you do. If you're self-employed, this is super, super crucial. If you're in any job, you should have like a paper checklist of things you need to do that day, right? And be crossing them off through the day. Maybe you don't need a huge notepad, maybe a little thing. Even better than using your phone, it should be like pen and paper, which we've talked about before, right? Uh,
Mhm.
Knowing what you need to do, prioritizing that whole thing. And I would say making sure you're not like looking at your phone too much, right? I mean, everyone does it, myself included, but and then at the very least be using like the green screen sort of thing, right? So it affects your sleep less, right? I think most people know about that now, and it's pretty popular now. That's a default feature on the iPhone.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you should probably be turning your devices off about an hour before bed if
Hmm.
you're in an ideal situation.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I'm the same. Like, I'm not very good with it, but
hmm
in an ideal world,
yeah,
you should be shutting your stuff off and actually putting it on the other side of the room at
hmm
minimum, if not
yeah, yeah,
in another part of the house. Or,
exactly. No,
yeah,
it's funny you mentioned that because that's actually, let me come back to that, but that's a very good point. And then, yeah, I would say just being prepared. Not, yeah, in theory, like an hour before bed or whatever. I don't know. Read, sit there and think, talk to your significant other,
well,
do something other. What's that?
Whoa, talk to your significant other.
Yeah, crazy. Not just Snapchat them while they're right beside you. End of the day, like finish, like if you want to succeed and be better, like finish the day focusing on that, preparing for that. Like don't finish every night, you know, looking at Riley Reid or someone like that, right? So, if that's because like we form habits very easily as people, and you have a whole whack of habits that like you might not even be aware of, right? And negative habits, and that's a bit of a, let's call it extreme example, but if you're just habitually looking at scrolling Instagram or watching YouTube videos or whatever, like that becomes ingrained in your routine, in your psyche, perhaps without you even realizing it, right? And that's a pretty unhealthy thing to do before bed, right? Josh and I go a little tinfoil hat when it comes to blue light, and Josh more than me, because I know Josh has some pretty hardcore the anti-blue light apps on your phone where you look at his phone screen and his computer and it's like orange. So yeah,
At
and
like
I got
3 p.m.
I
in
got
the
the
afternoon.
I have the blue light reading glasses. I don't know where they are. They're not around me, but little things like that. So night before, obviously sleep is super important. If you're what Josh said, getting up at a consistent time, you should be trying to go to sleep at a consistent time too. And how early, how late, that can depend on your schedule, right? And there's no perfect formula because, like we said, like depending on what your job necessitates, you should adjust too, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've even more tinfoil hatty on like the electromagnetic stuff that your phone is pushing out. So, and how it actually disrupts sleep waves. There's some research that's going into this. It's
Oh,
super
really?
fascinating. Yeah, there's like companies that are creating boxes for your phone at night to put your phone in the box and then close the box so that there's no electromagnetic radiation coming out and hitting you. Like there's people that
Oh, wow.
say to shut off your Wi-Fi at night too because of seriously.
Really?
Yeah. Like
Interesting. I'd be curious
yeah,
to read into that a little more.
there's some research that's going into it lately that's pretty interesting. So would recommend. In addition to that, before I left Edmonton, I got into a routine where I was actually shutting off all lights and lighting candles before I was going to sleep for about an hour. Um, completely taking out any artificial
no
light.
artificial light. Oh, okay.
Yeah. And that's something I definitely recommend.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I like it.
One thing I'd also add to the night before is setting out clothing for the next day.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So if you're going to the gym in the morning, setting out your gym clothes and also the clothes that you're going to be wearing for the next day, because there's something called decision fatigue. And when you're making a decision as to, well, what shirt am I wearing with these pants in the morning? And you take 15 minutes to get an outfit prepared, you're actually using up some willpower, and the amount of energy that it takes to make that decision is tangible. And
No, that's really good, actually. Well, yeah,
it's the
I mean, like
reason.
anything, like so, decision making and discipline are it. This is a real thing. Are like muscles, right? So, you in your mind have a certain level of. It's largely kind of discipline and self regulation, right? And like each thing you do does use up a portion of that. It's called the self regulatory resource model.
Self-regulatory resource model. I'll have to look that up.
If I do
All I
recall
know,
correct.
all I know is the reason that Steve Jobs wears turtlenecks and New Balances every single day.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, when you don't have to worry about it, right?
And I mean, you don't have to go that extreme, but making the decision the night before saves you all the decision making in the morning next. So why not do it?
Well, even if you're someone who like you get up 30 minutes before your alarm, if you're not going to change or like, all right, let's eliminate the excuse if you don't have time or blah, blah, blah. Well, do it the night before. Or if you want to sleep in, hit snooze a few times. All right, be prepared for that, right?
Well, when your gym shit is staring you in the face and you're like, oh, I'm going to skip the gym, you kind of feel even a little bit more bad about skipping. So
actually, if we
having
want
that,
to even go a step further with that, would be, I mean, maybe don't do this, or I mean, who cares? You could, in theory, sleep in your gym stuff, and the reason for
Mm,
that is there's some psychology out there. If you're having trouble going to the gym, uh, put on your gym outfit before you go there, like when you're at home, and there's something to it. But basically, you kind of say, like, once you have it on, you're like, well, like, I have my gym clothes on already. Like, I've come this far. It's kind of like a mental hack, if you will, that will increase your likeliness of actually going.
nah, I sleep naked.
There you go.
Ladies.
Take notes.
Yeah. No, but that's definitely all important things that you can consider doing the night before anything. Like it sets the pace for the morning
Mm-hmm.
following. So
Yeah. Yeah.
is there anything else that you want to add to like nighttime?
No, I don't think so. Again, I think phone away from bed is probably the key, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I've flip flopped on over the years, right? But when it's away from you, it makes a huge difference in going to sleep and to transition into the next portion of this, getting up. So if you're someone who has trouble getting up to an alarm, getting up on time, getting up early, the easiest thing you can do is, assuming most people use their phone for their alarm, right? Set it up so it's across the room from you. Basically, there's no way for you to turn off the alarm without physically standing up and getting out of bed is the key there.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that, and if you're starting a new job or you're wanting to try and get up earlier or whatever it is, you're getting your inspiration from, the Long and Hard podcast to do. I think that would be a really big one, because once you like have stood up, like your blood starts flowing, you're moving around. You're like, oh, okay, I guess I'm up. Right. It's, if your phone's sitting right next to your head and you just go boop, snooze like that, that's easy. Right. You have to kind of, know yourself, but also force yourself into these situations in a way too, right?
One thing people fall into is looking at their phone for an hour before they get out of bed in the morning too. Like
Yep.
scrolling social media, looking at YouTube videos, blah blah blah. Adam's actually pointing to himself with his thumb like this.
Yeah. Oh, we're all killed. I mean, the
Yeah,
dopamine
most definitely.
receptors we carry every day, all the time. Like you're kind of combating smartphones 24/7 is the ultimate productivity hack, right?
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, if you take that hour that you were looking at your phone, and I mean, I'm super guilty of this too,
Mm-hmm.
and you go put it into something else, like that's 365 hours you save every year doing something potentially productive, life changing, maybe even. So,
Definitely.
what else do I have here? Oh, I have one thing about every single time that you hit snooze, you lose.
Let's let's
But
get some. We're getting T-shirts and bumper stickers to the shot Long and Hard store soon. So
there you go. Yeah. No, but I mean, you set the pace in the morning immediately. So if that's how you start your morning with a loss like that, there's a podcast I recommend everybody go listen to, Jocko Willink's podcast. These guys like a retired Navy SEAL. He'll kick your ass into shape. But one thing he talks about is that you either win or you lose the morning based on that decision. Is, do I hit the alarm and sleep for another 5 minutes, or do I get up, get out of bed, start working towards my future and my goals and whatever? And that sets the pace for the rest of the day. That
and what was
first
that guy's
decision,
name again, Josh?
Jocko Willink
How do
is
you?
his name.
Okay, I will figure out how to spell that and put a link in the show notes. Actually, that's a good point. And one little thing, and there's some like commencement speech out there for Harvard or who the hell knows, where it was like some army general, and it's about making your bed in the morning, right? And why is the army so diligent about it? Well, it's like, because if that's the first thing you do is you get up and you make your bed super tidy, like you're starting the day by accomplishing a task, like it's orderly. It will then motivate you to complete another task and the next one, right? So kind of like what that guy was saying there is, yeah, you set the tone, right? So if you schlep out of bed, hit snooze 100 times, don't make your bed, right? Like you're that's like 3, 4, 5 things of kind of setting the day for laziness, right?
Mhm.
Versus, well, the other way around.
Well, momentum is a bitch, and it works in your favor, and inertia just works against you. So if you start the day lying around for another hour, I mean, get cracking. You'll see that your days are far more productive and fulfilling when you actually start doing something first thing in the morning. One thing I really like doing in the morning is just doing like a very easy workout, 10 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, uh, maybe some yoga or something. Maybe one of these things, maybe all of these things, but getting moving in the morning, getting your blood flowing is huge.
Yeah,
I can
that's very true for sure.
I
And
can
yeah,
tangibly feel a better day when I do that.
oh, absolutely. And that's a good point. There is blood flow too, right? So, uh, from the getting up to turn off your alarm to, yeah, doing some push-ups or squats or lunges or jumping around or whatever it might be, that, yeah, it's all about kind of the blood flow, and you will immediately feel that. And um, I think this kind of transitions into my next point here that I wrote down. I think this is my last note for this one, but and you know what, this might be a throwback for you, Josh, but if you're in this mindset self-improvement corner of the internet, you'll hear a lot of guys harp on this, but and this is kind of an expert mode one, is cold showers, right? So and frankly, I haven't done or at the very least have slacked a decent bit on this, but
They're hard, man.
They're hard, man. It's a lot more comforting to jump into a nice warm shower, right?
Yeah.
Especially first thing in the morning, but a cold shower, like, so wherever you are, your shower will have a cold setting for the most part, right? Sometimes older ones are screwed up, but anyways, and if you set it to the coldest setting, you'll get basically like the pure, true, like city water, like
Yeah.
what the water's coming into your house at before hitting any hot water heaters or whatever, and that water is at like about like 3 degrees Celsius, so it is goddamn cold, right? Now the
Yeah.
point of this is twofold. So number one, speaking on the blood flow point, like the amount you will wake up from a cold shower is to the 10th degree so much greater than the strongest cup of coffee, right? For what it will actually physically wake you up, right? So
Yeah.
you will always come out of a cold shower like alert, ready to go. Your senses are going, your blood's flowing. Now, and part two of it is kind of like the mental, slightly more, let's call it meta sort of thing of, it's hard. It sucks. Like getting in there, like you'll feel like something's wrong. I need to get out. This is too cold. But your body actually can take it, right? Like your body can handle it. And like most things, your mind will want to quit before your body physically needs to quit, right? So you can actually push yourself a lot. And then after a while, the water, like it's not cold anymore. It just feels like water. Like it's not warm by any means, but it starts feeling less cold, right?
It's you start your day by doing something exceptionally difficult, and I mean, you get out of them and you feel like $1,000,000 because you're like, I mean, I've got out of showers before, like 3-degree showers, and being like, "Oh, it's time to fucking kill the day."
Yeah.
And
Well, it does like take your breath away. It forces you to like breathe through it. Like it's a whole experience in itself. If you've never done it before, like try it at least once just to say you have, right?
Yeah, I mean, they never get easier, and it's a very psychological thing. It's really cool. I think you're gonna get me back on the train for this because I quite love them. And it's doing something hard that 99% of people are not doing. Yeah, it's first thing in the morning. So you're doing like a hard thing. Everything else that you do throughout the day is going to seem easier because you already did something that sucks. And it's like a psychological mind hack. So,
for sure. And I think that's a really good one for anyone who's like an early riser, especially if you're more like kind of trades route or whatever. I would for sure try that if I were you, especially, you know, because you can almost guarantee you're going to start more like 7 o'clock or whatever. So you should get if you really want to kick your own ass in the morning, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, there's a guy on Twitter. He's like, dunking your head in a bucket of ice water, the original nootropic.
That's funny.
For those of you that don't know what a nootropic is, it's essentially a drug for your mind to make your cognitive abilities fire better. So, yeah. I think I'm gonna get back on the train. We'll have to keep each other accountable for this. We'll do a 30-day challenge or something.
Yeah. Let's see how we do with some cold showers over the next week, and then maybe do something of it.
Yeah, next week we'll report back. I'll probably have made $100,000 by then. You know, jump in the cold shower, instantly get out, make $100,000. So.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to hit, but I think we covered my list.
Yeah, my notes here I had, and you know, end of the day, it's not about like a top secret formula. It's doing a few small challenging things, right? Like everything on here is a bit of a challenge, right? Putting your phone away, doing something that other than just looking at Instagram, right? Before bed, having a cold shower, getting up at the same time every day, going to bed the same time every day. Like those are like, they're challenging, but they're not hard things to do, right? We're not saying wake up and run a half marathon every morning. It's a few small little pieces of things you can do to set yourself up to succeed, right? And then what you go on and do with that afterwards is kind of up to you.
I actually have one thing to add. Get excited to get up in the morning, because if you're not excited to get up in the morning and do what you're going to be doing, you need to reevaluate what you're doing with your life. Every single day, I'm pretty excited to get up. I'm pretty excited to like learn something new, do something that hasn't been done before, that I've never even thought about doing before. Every single day needs to be like that for you. If you're not like that, look at yourself in the mirror and say, why isn't it like that? And then adjust your life to make it so that every morning you're excited to get out of bed. Going to bed should not be the best part of your day. God damn it.
Yeah, exactly. Looking forward to, you know, the opportunity and everything you have the next day, and just another day above ground, right?
Yeah. And when you start looking at life that way, you start to be just happier in general. I'm not going to say more successful or whatever. You just become happier, and that's a big shift unto itself.
Yeah, I don't know. It's easy. Morning glory, right?
It's a good fucking song. I can't believe you never heard it before.
No, I haven't.
So I think we're going to shift pace to talk a little bit about the news that has come out this week.
Yeah, let's do it. What's going on in the world, Josh? Actually, if I may interrupt you after I just asked you a question, I saw something interesting.
Oh, so we made a mistake.
What's that?
So we made a mistake. You asked me this is a Crystalia thing. You asked me a question and you interrupted me. So we made a mistake, right? Sorry, keep going.
I don't think I've heard that bit, but that's funny.
I'm gonna have to send you that episode. It's hilarious.
What I was gonna say is, speaking of news and stuff, I just saw something that really made me think. It was on my Instagram. It was like a promoted ad.
Yeah.
What it was it was two realtors in Nigeria promoting like a new development there.
Okay.
And like but it would appear, I need to go back and I just looked at it super quick because I was reading the text to figure out what the hell they were doing, but I need to listen to it, and look at the website, but it would appear they're selling property there, targeting North Americans. So I don't know, maybe this is the 2019 Nigerian Prince's 2019 overseas real estate thing. So,
or maybe it's the final frontier.
Yeah.
Use the final frontier, invested overseas. There you go.
In all actuality, it could, in theory, really be that too, right? So, but yeah, that was something different that I did not wake up this morning expecting to hear. So
I'll do a little bit more research into that. Maybe Nigeria is the next U.S. of A.
Well, I mean, there is something to foreign property ownership for sure, right? And finding undervalued markets or stuff that's up and coming, but that's
a whole nother level.
Yeah, that's a little different.
Maybe they'll give you citizenship for jack shit. Like maybe you buy like a shoebox house and they'll give you citizenship or something. Maybe they're wanting that sort of thing.
Potentially, actually, that's very well what it could be.
Everything's a pendulum. Like, I mean, everybody was wanting to come to the U.S. Now everybody's trying to like get a second citizenship elsewhere. Yeah. So who knows? Let's talk about, to begin. One thing that has to do with travel. Let's talk about that to begin with. So, global airline revenue forecasts are cut heavily if the trade war continues. So, this has to do a lot with what's going on between the US and China, and I mean, to an extent, the EU as well. But there is a big thing coming out essentially talking about fuel costs, cost of airlines. What else here? I'm looking at the article. It's a Fox Business article. Just let me pull this up here. But yeah, one thing that is super interesting, I'm just going to ramble for a second, is that do you know what the average profit is per passenger on a flight from anywhere in the world to anywhere in the world, pretty much?
How much, Josh?
Well, guess. Come on, make it fun for me.
I think isn't it, or well, yeah, it's cheating because I saw your notes, but it's under $10, isn't it?
It's less than $7 for every passenger. Like that's insane. Like that's razor thin margins when you think about it.
Oh yeah, and I think that's a semi-known fact that it's really thin margins, very, very, very high fixed costs as well in that business.
Yeah, very true. So, and on top of that, there's one thing that's very interesting is that they're cutting a lot of first class. I don't know if you've noticed this, but there's a lot of airlines that don't even do first class seats anymore.
Interesting.
They're moving.
It makes sense because it'll be like, $200 extra to go the same distance, right? And it's like, do I need to be slightly more comfortable flying an hour to Vancouver or whatever? No, I'll probably live, right?
Well, what they're doing is they're moving, because first class is like a completely different class in quotation marks than business class. So they take up almost twice as much room than a business class seat. So actually what a lot of these airlines are doing is increasing their business class capacity, but they're axing first class. And you're not going to see first class except on like your
long haul.
Well, not even like your Dubai Emirates type airlines, which is kind of interesting.
Like call it a high end one, right?
Yeah, you're not going to get your condos in the sky or whatever they call them. Although I need to shower on a plane before I die. That's something that's pretty damn.
Oh, the one where they give you like the little tube and you have like a miniature hotel room sort of thing or whatever, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it says that the world's airline industry is getting downgraded for its outlook due to a rising cost of fuel and weakening world trade. So, hey, good for Alberta, I guess.
Yeah, sure. Sweet stuff. Yeah. I mean, one thing about flight, the flight commercial airline business or whatever you want to call it is as per I want to say this isn't an original thought. I heard this somewhere, whether it was a book or a podcast or something. But air flight hasn't actually changed almost at all since like the 1970s. The only real difference is like the iPads in the back of the headrests, right? The actual technology in terms of like combustion engines of the planes and how the planes work hasn't changed, right? which is, I mean, what's the solution to bring costs down and make it a more efficient industry, right? Because it truly is. And when you look at, just it's astronomical fixed costs too. Like there's fuel, but I mean, there's another reason that profit margin is $6 or whatever, right? So,
well, I mean, these low cost airlines, what they do is they try to cut costs as much as possible by ordering bulk airplanes. So they'll buy all the same jet and fly only that jet. So they only have to do maintenance for a 737, for example.
oh, okay, yeah.
And their maintenance crew is trained only on the 737, for example. Like it's all
Like
cost cutting now.
Thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas you used to be able to get like turkey and roast beef on a plane. Like there's actually pictures of this stuff. I wish I was born in like the 40s or 60s or whatever.
Well, like you didn't have to sit the whole time. There was like normal flights would have like a second tier with like a lounge and stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, like the very upper echelon airlines do still have that, but I mean, everybody's going low cost these days. So.
Oh, and you could smoke on the airplanes back then too, which was great.
Yeah, man. I missed out. I was kidding.
Pre-smoking ban.
Yeah. As a whole, the airline industry contributes 65 million jobs and 2.7 billion to the global economy. Pretty big industry, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting to see, I guess, right? Well, does this mean, I don't know, rising ticket costs for day-to-day consumers? Did you ever see the thing where, because, obviously any airline business is going to look to make more money because they're a business, but B, they need to in their situation. There's a thing where they were trying to rearrange the seating in planes to try and fit more people into a plane. And it was basically like most rows are 3 generally on like a 737 or whatever, right? Like 3 seats, like so 6 in a row, 3 and 3, right?
Sure.
And they were trying to make it like 6 per side, and like it was kind of like this hexagonal sort of shape where you would have 3 of you kind of interlocked like this, where 3 are facing the front and 3 are facing the back. And like to use the bathroom, if you're like the window seat, like everyone would have to get up, so you basically couldn't. And it was this weird like kind of honeycomb shape. It was just the craziest thing. I mean, it would never actually fly. Haha, good pun. But it was something where it was probably something just proposed at some corporate meeting, because from like a dollars and cents point of view, it makes sense. But it was freaking hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of pet peeves when it comes to this stuff, because I mean, like, well, I'll be traveling home next week, but I mean, they don't let you check extra baggage now. So every extra bag is $50 or whatever. They try to screw you as much as possible. The whole lounge scene is getting more and more garbage. I mean, frequent flyer miles. There we go. Doesn't really take you anywhere anymore. Like it's more difficult to get status on airplanes, and they don't usually give you like free upgrades anymore because, well, they want to save money. So.
Yeah,
but it says a $909 billion a year industry. That's pretty. It's a pretty big industry, almost $1 trillion.
Yeah, well, that's pretty close. Almost what would that be? 4 comma club.
Yeah, I guess.
Oh, there you go. What? All right. Well, I mean, like, you want to move on here? What's our next one here? Probably go with this antitrust one.
Yeah. Antitrust. Oh, yeah. Are we going to be breaking up?
Be afraid, very afraid, according to Bloomberg.
Are we going to be breaking up the tech companies? I don't know. This is interesting. So essentially, what they're going to be doing, is they're going to be doing a antitrust probe into. It looks like Google, but on Monday,
Google is the only one named here, but
but on Monday, like the stock market just tumbled based on the news. All the tech companies got hit. Well, I'm not gonna say hit. They got hammered. Like it was like 6% down. So essentially, what people are saying is these companies are getting too big. The data consumption and collection is getting out of hand. Yada yada yada. Stuff that we kind of talked about a couple of weeks ago, I want to say. But
well, even last episode, we were kind of talking about how, well, it's getting to a critical mass where we say, is this something that and the internet itself as well, is this something where, because it's so integrated in our world, like, does it become like a utility, right?
Mhm.
Like, at what level is regulation appropriate or not? Because it's a private company, but if 80% of the internet is based on Google's cloud or whatever, right? Where's kind of that threshold, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm kind of tinfoil hatty compared to a lot of people in that I don't really want a lot of my information out in a cloud where, I mean, if you don't realize this, I'm about to blow your mind, but I think a lot of people do know this, is that every single time you upload a file to Google Drive, they're mining it for data. So they're running algorithms on it for recognition of text, for 100 different things. But that's why these services are free, because they use your data and then sell it to third-party advertisers, to companies that are looking for insights. They sell it to a bunch of different companies.
So that would just be using like to further narrow your demographic by kind of mining your Google Drive data, right?
Well, I mean, I think that there's a lot of questionable stuff. Like they're all black boxes, these companies, right? So you don't know what's going on behind the veil, we'll call it.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing that a lot of people are concerned about. I mean,
I actually, as a avid Google Drive user, and so is this show, I had no idea about that, honestly, but it makes sense. So
Yep. So I mean, and your emails too. So if you use Gmail,
for sure.
Yeah, they are going through those. They're looking at your conversations and they're saying, "Oh, you were talking about shelving the other day. Here's an advertisement for some nice cabinetry."
Well, even if you're a Gmail user, you've probably noticed on most newer accounts, I don't know if they've rolled it out for everyone, because I have several Gmail accounts and not all of them have it, but your like, you can auto respond to a lot of emails. So like, when someone sends you an email, you'll be like, you can tap like, looks good, thanks, or I don't see the attach. Like, you'll have 3 canned responses, and they're very useful because like a lot of emails, all the necessary response is just that, like a 3-word, thanks, looks good.
Yeah.
Cheers. Right. But for them to be able to do that is they have to read the email, because the responses are very contextually appropriate. Right. So,
yeah. Well, they're getting to a status of almost a monopoly. So your Google, you're looking like for search, they have it pretty much monopolized in the United States. If you go to China, there's another company called Weibo or whatever. They have it monopolized there. But in the US, I think they run like 75 or 80% of searches, which is just like insane, right? So, and then on top of that, they are able to dictate what people are seeing at the end of those searches. So if I search for X and I want a certain result, well,
they can would doctorate be the right word, or just kind of influence, I guess, would be right?
Yeah. And it ties into a bunch of this stuff about artificial intelligence and biases and all that, but we won't really get into that. But my take on it is that when you start introducing external bias into any of these systems, then you create kind of a worse system. And over the past 3 to 5 years, that's kind of what's been going down behind the scenes. So, I mean, the whole Cambridge Analytica thing with Facebook was just a tip of the iceberg, I'm thinking. So,
absolutely.
Get your tinfoil hats on. That's why I sat at the kitchen today, so I can get my tinfoil out really quickly. But
I should have brought my roll up here. We could have wrapped ourselves up. We should do an instructional video on how to properly create a tinfoil hat for followers of this show. It's it is definitely like, well, if you look up the definition of a monopoly or a trust, like Google and Facebook and stuff, particularly Google, like it sounds like you're describing them, right? And what I think is interesting here is that it says, well, Google actually was under scrutiny for an antitrust suit in 2013, right? Which sounds like a recent year, but in terms of tech, 2013 was basically ancient history, right? Like when you think how much things have changed, internet wise and even Google wise, and how much they do and what they own, right? It would look, they've all, generally speaking, tech companies grow exponentially. So their exponential growth is just, like shooting way up on a line. It probably barely looks the same as an organization, right?
Well, let's put it into perspective. Google's market cap in 2013 was like $300 billion. Today, it is inching up on that trillion.
So triple.
Yeah. 900.
There you go.
Yeah. 915 at its peak in 2019. So yeah, you're looking at triple market cap. So like these companies are much larger than they even were 6 years ago.
Yeah. And this article kind of talks about how Washington is much different than 2013, but like it's better to look at how much the tech space has changed. And again, like when you think back to 2013 internet, like just the way websites were, the way social media worked, like it's so different, right? So it's definitely a lot, especially in terms of like the whole algorithm thing. Like everyone has algorithms now. They had significantly lesser ones then. So it'll be interesting to follow this and see what happens for sure. I mean, how, you want it to be a more fair system that works for everyone, or whatever you want to say. But then, okay, what's the solution? Is to have the government run it? Like that's what my apprehension is too, right? Like if the government took over Google, like what? Like that sounds like a lose-lose situation to me too.
Yeah, it's a sticky situation. I mean, it's a natural monopoly, I guess, because of the first to market advantage they had back in the early 2000s.
Well, proprietary info for many years too. So
yeah. Well, I mean, to put in perspective,
this is a. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, to put it in perspective, Facebook was going to be facing a $6 billion fine over what had happened with the information stuff. They make that every single quarter in profit. They're just whatever. It's not going to make a big difference to us. Fine us the $6 billion. The EU is actually a lot more stringent, and I'm not going to compliment the EU too much, but they've been fining these companies continuously tens of billions of dollars over the past 3 years. So
really, because now I know EU has a new copyright content law that seemed too all-encompassing.
Yeah, that's just stupid.
The joke everyone's making is that memes are illegal now, basically. So,
well, it's the internet was never supposed to be a centralized application. It was supposed to be a bunch of people sharing information,
a bunch of interconnected personal computers, right?
Exactly. Like if you really want to get down to the basis of what the internet should have been, it's a bunch of different websites and blogs that come together to create a big web of information. And it's not supposed to be centralized in any one node, be it Facebook or Google or Amazon or blah, 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 blah. It's supposed to be decentralized. So I think we talked about this on our previous podcast, but there's definitely some efforts to bring it back to what its original intention was to be.
Yeah.
Very interesting stuff for sure.
Well, and then this is a totally different can of worms, but decentralization, decentralized nodes makes me think of, well, like blockchain. So does that factor in somewhere in the future? I guess
I'm
we'll find
thinking
out.
it does. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
thinking blockchain is pretty much.
it's got to be the only real way to do it. Well, so Google has so much computing power, right?
Mhm.
If they were to shut down Google tomorrow, well, then you would basically need the entire network, meaning like literally everyone on their computer to support that computing power, right?
Yeah.
And if you're not familiar with like blockchain and stuff, that makes no sense. But this makes a lot of sense as I'm kind of thinking through this myself right now. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, they have huge data centers, these companies, right? So that's why cloud is getting huge, is because there's extra resources these companies have that allow you to store your data on their computers, because they're not using all of their resources. But if you go and see these data centers, they're the size of small cities, man. They're ridiculously huge.
be curious to see for sure.
Yeah. It's a very interesting world we're heading into for sure. I don't know if I have the answers, but I do think that blockchain does play a part in the coming internet 3.0. I guess it would be called. I don't know.
Would it be 3.0? Why would it be 3.0? Who was 2.0?
Well, 1.0 would have been like the original internet.
Right.
2.0 probably would have been your big tech companies, and then 3.0 is probably your going back to a decentralized
Whatever's
sort
next.
of.
What
Yeah.
was that guy's name again, by the way? The guy who created the internet?
Sir Tim Berners-Lee is his name. So look that guy up, put him in the show notes. He's working on a current project that I don't know if it's going to catch on or whatever, but it's an interesting read too. It's called Solid. They're trying to do some decentralized applications, essentially where you hold your own information, and the only way these companies get it is if you plug in and give them a certain amount of the information. So let's say you're going to the hospital and you have all your information here, you give the hospital just your medical records. You don't give them anything else. You don't need to give them your relationship history on Facebook, for example. You only have to give them the medical records. You give them nothing else. And then after your procedure is done, you pull them back out and they're yours to keep. So they're your data. These companies don't control your data. And that's the big thing, is that more and more people, I think, are moving towards wanting to control their own data, and to be able to even profit off of their own data, because you use Facebook, you don't see $10 in your bank account every month because of the ad dollars that are getting run towards you. Facebook does.
Yep.
So interesting stuff. I don't know if I have the answers. I'm not nearly brilliant in this space compared to these guys that are coming up with this stuff, but
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
And that kind of actually ties into the third article.
Yeah. So it would appear we maybe predicted the future. I mean, market movers in 2019 are Warren Buffett, Jim Cramer, and Long and Hard podcast. So basically, was this Sunday? There was a big, it was Sunday. There was a big internet outage. I'll let you explain it because you can articulate this better than me, Josh. But basically,
go ahead.
Google also comes back into it again too, right? There's a bunch of outages. Essentially, it would appear to stem at Google, and then the many websites that are on Google's platform, Google's cloud.
So a lot of people don't realize that your Shopify, I'm not gonna talk about all the companies, but go ahead.
Can I, if I may chime back in? It's actually very interesting to see, and check the article link. And this was I don't really know the scope of this, but most people know Google obviously owns Gmail and owns YouTube, but how many huge companies are hosted on Google's cloud, right? Meaning Google does most of the kind of underlying infrastructure, to paint it with very broad strokes, right? So
Yeah.
they're a lot more intermingled and stuff. Speaking of big internet breakup, not to sound like a total, power to the people type, but they're a lot more intermingled than you really realize too, just looking at this.
Yeah. So we were discussing cloud services in the previous article. It's the same thing when it comes to website hosting. So essentially, these companies don't want to host their own servers on site or whatever. So they offload them to Google or Amazon. AWS is one of the largest ones right now. You have Google Cloud, you have DigitalOcean, which is a smaller player. You have Microsoft
And
Cloud.
for people who aren't familiar, what is AWS, Josh?
Amazon Web Services. So Amazon Web Services is actually where a lot of Amazon profit comes from. They don't make a lot of profit on the products they sell. They make a lot of profit on their web services. So, and the average person has no idea
What's
about that.
interesting is AWS now advertises. I started seeing ads during NHL games, like when they paint it in the ice or on the boards,
Yep.
which seems strange to publicly advertise, but because that's more of a B2B business, is it not? In many ways, like it.
Yeah, I would say so, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they run Netflix. They run like Netflix runs all of its website, its services off of Amazon Web Services. But I mean, Google Cloud runs, I want to say like Shopify. They run a lot of these huge, and Shopify runs millions of e-commerce sites on top of that, right? So
Yeah.
if you have an e-commerce site on Shopify, your site was down on Sunday. You probably saw that too, and that's
Man, my Snapchat was down for hours. It was hurting. If for young single men out there, like you need your Snapchat to be functioning properly at all times, really.
Yeah, no, but I mean that's another thing too. That's another service that's run on these. So it's there's a lot of these companies that aren't doing. They don't control their own data. They're offloading it to Google. I mean, our company, we run our stuff on Google Cloud too. So
yeah. Well, that even ties interestingly into the last article, where it's not just your information that you give directly to Google via Gmail, Google Drive, Google Docs, anything else you might use. Like it's when your Snapchat, your YouTube, like when all this other stuff is also hosted, like Google inadvertently has your information that you don't even realize you're giving them as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, when you think about it that way. I mean, YouTube was down. YouTube's a huge Google service. If I'm sure a lot of people don't even know that, but YouTube is Google as well. So they have like actually a list of the companies that were down here.
Yeah.
Snapchat, YouTube.
Now, looking at these little graphs here, Josh, how they all peak.
Yeah.
What is that showing us? Is that showing the number of crashes? Is that showing us the number of
I want to say that's a number of internet searches for the service being down. So if you go to like a trend, yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah. No, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Actually,
so if you're,
I think each one links. Oh no, that's just a picture. Okay, never mind.
Yeah. So if you look on your Google Trends or whatever, that's just a bunch of people searching what the hell's going on. Why is my Snapchat down? Yeah.
So, well, the article title, granted, this is a semi-opinion piece, is "Did the government just test the internet kill switch?" Which again ties into an article from last week's episode where we were talking about how in Canada they were looking at stricter regulations on Facebook and also Google, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. What do you think? Or some people, we were having a good discussion the other day that, most people know war is bad. So hopefully we won't see like a nuclear war or anything. If anything, the next war will be fought via, data and keyboard warriors, right? I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, the whole thing that's going on with China and the US is kind of it makes me ask some questions about, is this a cyber attack of some sort? I mean,
cyber attack, that was the word I was looking for.
Yeah. None of these companies are going to come out and say we were
attacked.
We were DDoSed by 10 million computers from China or whatever, right? Like nobody's going to come out and say that. And the issue is that, like, all this shit is very quiet, and this article is going to get thrown under the rug. Nobody's going to pick it up because, I mean, it's not in any of the interest of these companies. Also, I mean, Google controls the news search if you're searching for news, so they're going to just bury this article.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know. I don't think it's. I think it's a conspiracy theory. Like, I mean, I think that potentially this is more like a attack from a botnet somewhere or something. But it has to be a huge attack to take down these servers.
Oh, exactly.
Like a small website, you
Easy.
don't need that much.
You can be one guy who kind of knows what they're doing, right? And you can find a backdoor or whatever. So
yeah, well, I mean, you don't even need to kind of know what you're doing. There's these scripts online. I'm not going to talk about this because we're going to get fucking flagged or something. But like they're called script kiddies, and they can essentially copy and paste scripts in, and you can take a website down by doing that. But but a big attack on a big company like this, that has to be something that's coordinated.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then, whether it's Russia or China or something like that, it's interesting. And I mean, maybe we'll see more of this. I mean, we're slowly stumbling in too much into political news here, right? Which I kind of want to avoid. But from a technological point of view, it's interesting how this all ties together. Of we're coming into an era of kind of your freedom of information, control of your information. Taking almost a step backwards to ensure more personal privacy, and then stronger regulation on these companies because they've just become such a huge amalgamation that, like, it's when you really think about it, and like even looking, I would encourage you to go in the show notes and read this or click through this article, and it'll show you how all these companies are connected, right? And it's kind of eye-opening in a lot of ways, right?
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think that here's my I'm going to go on a rant here for a second, but I think that there's a lot of push away from the centralization. I think that people want to be living in these like tinier communities. So even like in real life, but also online and stuff, people are looking for these like communities that are not these huge companies that are overarching over everything. Like, I mean, I think that's why Facebook is pushing groups so much, is that they kind of know that this is the direction things are going. People want to be in their collective talking about the things they want to talk about. And they don't want to be under this company of 2 billion users. They want to be kind of around people that are like them, like a novel concept, I guess. But
yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, I think that there's definitely going to be some interesting stuff that comes up over the next 6 months to a year about this. So,
well, I was even going to say, like 5 years from now, like it'll look completely different, but the internet moves pretty fast, right? So curious to see here what's going on with all this.
Yeah, I am of the mindset that you want to not regulate too much stuff, but at the same time, these companies are getting so big that they're infringing upon individual privacy. And I think privacy is a fundamental human right. And you need to be cherishing your privacy because, like, I mean, people are like, oh, I have nothing to hide. But I mean, there's still stuff you don't want out there in the wild, right? So,
oh, definitely. It's it's a weird kind of mingle of where you have two you have an outlook on the world, but then they're starting to contradict each other in this scenario where you believe in very minimal regulation, but these companies are getting so big and it has to give one way or another.
Yeah. So I don't know. Fucking make your tinfoil hat.
Yeah.
Put it on.
Yeah, throw out your phone, go live in the forest. That's the lesson here.
Yeah, that's pretty much the only solution if you really want to get away from this stuff. So it's
Definitely
the world we live in. So,
well, I think that's probably what we wanted to get through today. That's we'll have some links to the show, to these articles if you want to read them for yourself. Make your own opinions.
Yep. Everything we talked about will be linked in the show notes. You can obviously find us on all your favorite podcasting platforms: Spotify, YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play. I mean, it's like we're advertising for them after we went through the article.
Just after we ripped on them. So please don't take us down, Google.
They're gonna fucking they're gonna blacklist us. Anyway.
Yeah. RIP.
Yeah. So if you never hear from us again, you know what happened.
It's been fun.
Yeah.
Until then, we'll see you next week.
Absolutely. Signing off. Peace.